Hello and welcome to Conch Productions February 2023 Artist Chat. My name is Magaly Colimon-Christopher. I am your host for today, as well as Conch Productions founder and artistic director. Now, if you've never heard of Conch Productions before and you're just here to see our guest today, whose name I'm going to share, you can be ready, be sure to hear it. I'll tell you a bit about us. Our mission at Conch Productions is to infuse the unique voices of Caribbean diaspora and Caribbean writers into American film and television. It's that simple. And theater. It's that simple. Not really, but it's pleasurable. And in order to do so, we develop and present and produce new works. And we build a bridge with our Conch Artist Chat between our audience and these amazing creatives with inspiring, insightful, and sometimes provocative artist chats. Today, I'm no musician, we are chatting with Anslem Richardson. Anslem Richardson is a Trinidadian American actor, writer, visual artist, filmmaker, and he's based in Los Angeles, the place to be. And you may know him as the writer-producer of Amazon Prime's The Boys. Welcome, Anslem.
What's up?
How you doing today? I'm gonna say what I said before we started, that you look like an angel with the stuff above your head right now. Some kind of sci-fi thing about to go down. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Who knows? How's life in Los Angeles today?
Life is good. Excuse my voice. I'm getting over a sickness, so I lost it for a second there. But life is great. Taking some time off just to be with family and wife and kids. It's been really busy these last few years, especially these last few years. And just want some downtime, take some me time, self-care time.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing some of your me time with us today.
No doubt.
So tell us a little bit about your journey, going from a Trinidadian American actor to being producer-writer on Amazon Studios' hottest TV show. A little bit. I know you're not going to tell us everything, but like bullet points, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I was, born in Brooklyn. That's usually the usual Caribbean migration. They go to New York and then they go down to Florida because they get tired of the cold. Ended up at Florida State, and so I started doing plays there at Florida State with this troupe called the Black Players Guild, and then that led to me getting into an intensive with Lloyd Richards, who directed all of like Lorraine Hansberry's plays, all of August Wilson's plays, like leading all the way through like Fences and everything else. And he was revered.
Yeah, I met him. Amazing dude.
Love him.
I'll say amazing dude, but
yes.
Yes.
And so he was just like, at the end of it, he was like, so what are you doing with your life? And I don't know, because that was just my general answer for everything, at that time. I was like, I don't know. And he was just like, well, if you stopped acting, I'd be very disappointed. And I was like, huh. And at the time I'd gotten into the main stage production of Fences, even though I wasn't part of the drama school. And that went on tour. And the actress who was playing Rose, she was on that series Rock that we used to play. And she was like, what are you doing after this? I was like, I don't know. And she's like, well, if you go back to New York, I can set you up with my acting teacher. And you can, just try this out. And so I went to New York, started doing a lot of off, basement, Broadway type plays, and slowly started building up until finally I had something that was off Broadway. Which was
so what is slowly? What is slowly? How many years is slowly for you?
I think by the time I did the Exonerated I was maybe 5 or 6 years in to just like, into acting, just doing a bunch of like little small theater stuff. And so I finally got to there. And at the time, but also before that, I saw what I was doing on stage and I was strong. But then when I would do like indie films, I was approaching it as a stage actor. And I would look at like Meryl Streep and Morgan Freeman and people I like really revered. And I was like, they're doing something different. And I remember seeing Meryl Streep do The Seagull in Shakespeare in the Park. And I was just like, and even though like Philip Seymour Hoffman was in it, a bunch of big actors were in it. John C. Reilly, I forgot the other dude's name, but a bunch of them, Natalie Portman also. But there was something about Meryl Streep where, whereas everybody else was acting for the stage, you know, acting out, with her, even though you could hear everything that she was saying, you could easily just put a camera on her and she would be just as subtle and just as real. And I'm like, I want to know how to do that. How do you do that on camera? And so I started doing a lot more indie film. And so finally I had a short, my first short went to Sundance, and that was probably around the same time, 5-6 years in. And then I got another short the following year. And then a few years after that, another short with this dude and his brother, a team called the Barnes Brothers. And it was like their thesis for NYU. The first film was a thesis by Steve Mann. I don't know if you know that brother. And he's a big television director now. He's doing Shaka Zulu right now in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's just gonna be hot. But
can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you say I got, a lot of actors often ask me, how do I get these projects? How do I
Bust
do
your
a
ass.
student film at NYU? Do I need an agent to do this? I know that was back then, but I basically tell them, meet the people, go to the school, attend events.
You got to go to the
you did?
school. Yeah, because a lot of the people, well, first I found out, like, I was like, okay, well, which schools are doing the best shorts? Because there's a lot of like film schools there, but the product that's coming out is just crap. You know what I mean? And what I realized, the best director writers were coming from NYU and Columbia. So I made it my purpose to, when I would look in the trades, which was at that time backstage, you know, I would see which school they were in. And then I would, you know, just as your personality does a lot for you, made friends. And all of a sudden I was in this thing. And then all of a sudden another director would be like, yo, I saw you in this film. I'm doing this. Why don't you come through with this? And for a while, I was getting projects purely through word of mouth. I didn't even have to audition anymore. They were just like, okay, we see what you can do. And it was good. You know what I mean? And I just had that hustle and I would put in the fucking work. You know what I mean? And so by the time I got with the Barnes Brothers, they love working with me so much that they hit me up and they're like, look, we just wrote a feature with you in mind as the lead. And it's based on this guy's life. And so we did that, and it took like 13 days, and it got into Sundance in their new next section, and we ended up winning that section. You know what I mean? That was the first year, and we won it, and it was just like cool. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, you know, there's a lot more opportunities for Black like actors today than there was back then. So it's like, yeah, that's great, but I'm looking at the roles now coming to me, the feature roles, and they all suck. I'm either like a best friend of, or the person that dies, or some bullshit. And I'm just like, but I'm better than your lead actors. You know what I mean? And so I was getting so frustrated that I was like, I can write better than these scripts. You know what I mean? Based on nothing, just me, just having an ego. And so I wrote my first script, and it was called The Subway Story. And I submitted it to what was called the IFP, which is now, I think, Independent Film Week, if it even exists anymore.
No, the Gotham. It's called the Gotham.
It's called the Gotham now? Oh, so it's just changed a bunch of names. So I ended up winning the screenwriting award for that. It was the Gordon Park Screenwriting Award. So I was like, cool. And so then I'm thinking, okay, I made it. This is a role that I can play, blah, blah, blah. And the people were like, you know, would you think about recasting this as a white character? And I'm just like, at the same time, I'm broke. But I'm like, no, fuck you. No, it's gonna be me. But that also meant that it didn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? And I'm
Yeah.
back to like hustling, doing all types of like shitty jobs and PAing and stuff like that just to pay rent and feed myself. But one thing that they did tell me, they're just like, look, we love what you do with character. We love what you do with the genre, which was a kind of a thriller, sort of a Taxi Driver kind of script. Um, if there's anything else, let us know. And I didn't have anything else. And it took me a few years, like about 2 years before, and I was just racking my brain of like, okay, what's the thing that I want to do? I'm not the type of writer who just writes. You know what I mean? I don't have a multitude of scripts. You know what I mean? I have to feel something because I come from an art background. And so finally it hit me. I was reading the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and had seen, one of my favorite thrillers is the original Cape Fear with Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck. And I was like, oh, well, how can I play with those archetypes and like, man, and fuck with things? And also I was in love with Charlie Kaufman's work. And just like, how do you fuck with the genre? You know what I mean? And so I wrote this script called Bardos and submitted it to Tribeca. I submitted it as soon as I ended it. He was like, okay, fade out. And I submitted it. And the head of Tribeca at the time, this brother named Tamir Muhammad, he called me and he was just like, you wrote Bardos? And I was just like, yeah. He was just like, I'm from Tribeca, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to tell you, you didn't get in. But do me a favor, keep doing more drafts and submit again for next year. And I did. I kept working, and I got in the following year. And it ended up winning the Creative Promise Award in screenwriting at Tribeca. And so by now, I'm getting a couple TV things. I'm still working as a graphic designer for TV Land, an assistant graphic designer at TV Land, and just trying to figure out what my life was going to be. And so by the time the Barnes Brothers project won at Sundance, this manager hit me up and was just like, so why don't you come out to LA where she was? And I think I can do it. And I was like, I don't know, blah, I've got, whatever. And finally she gave me a phone call while I was at work and just basically like, shit or get off the pot. Okay, this is the last time I'm gonna call you. And I was just like, huh. And I hung up. I just like stared at my screen for like, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. And then I turned around to my supervisor and I'm like, I'm gonna give you my 2 weeks. And she was like, what? I was like, I gotta go. Because I was dying inside because they wanted to hire, because before I was like sort of like
Temp?
freelance. Yeah, temp. Well, not even a temp. I was kind of freelance. But they wanted to make like, this is your job. And I was like, ugh. I was like, no. They had like panic attacks. And like literally, like after they had told me that I had to attend a meeting for some other project that they were doing. And as I was walking out, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I went into like this little room and I had to get talked down to like, no, it's a panic attack that you're having, blah, blah, blah. So I left that job.
I call it my ancestors saying, wake the heck up. I call it my ancestors smacking me around and choking me to wake me up.
Yeah. And so I came to LA and I ended up with a new management company. And they were opening a new management company because I'd gone back to New York for a little bit. And they had we're opening up a literary division in LA. And at the time that I had won that the thing at Tribeca, I had also sold a web series to the IFC channel that they ran on their network and then online. And I was thinking of an idea of a new web series. And I just wrote a scene, a 9-page scene. And this literary manager that I really hit it off with, who I'm with to this day, he read that and he was like, what are you doing with that? And I was like, I don't know if I can, I don't have the funds to make it into a successful web series. And he was like, write it as a pilot. And I was like, I don't know, I don't really like TV like that. And he was like, well, write it as a movie that's, 65 minutes long with a little sort of a to be continued kind of a thing. And so I did that. And it was very much an homage to like the sort of political propaganda, films of the 70s,
Manchurian Candidate and stuff.
Parallax View, all the President's Men, 3 Days of the Condor, all of that stuff. And just that's really a rant to what had happened to political journalism at that time, which I just thought was just getting shitty and allowing for a lot of people to get away with things and becoming more celebrity and about like, just the wrong things. And so I wrote that, and that script, he ended up just like, he didn't even put it out to Hollywood or to whatever, like how you normally would. He just gave it to like certain tastemakers, actors who were politically minded and things like that. And they started buzzing about it. That got the attention of the big agencies, because they're just like, who the fuck are you? And why are they talking about you when we don't even know who you are? And so I ended up signing with CAA, and we sold it. And it was great. And I thought I fucking made it. But no, I didn't. There's different deals that you get. Like, and then this one was basically like an if-come deal. So if a studio comes there, then you get paid. And then the money comes. You know what I mean?
So it sounds like your journey has been this wonderful melange of yes, no, door open, door closed, door open, door closed.
And just going any place where I can find opportunities. So I'm still acting at this time, not making a lot of money, you know what I mean? Because I'm also writing. And so it's just, like things are like just tearing at me, you know what I mean? But then this dude, Sean Ryan, who created The Shield, he read the pilot and he was like, I'm doing this new series for NBC, come in, I just, let's talk. And so I went in, chopped it up with him. It was about time travel. And
what was the show? What was the time machine show
called?
Timeless. I loved that show.
Oh, no doubt.
I was so angry when they canceled it.
A lot of people were. A lot of people, I mean, even to this day, I get a lot of fans still hitting me up about Timeless. And like, so I hear rumors that it's coming together. And I was like, I don't hear anything like that. But, it was great that, because what it did was I got paid to basically get a history degree. You know what I mean? And every character that we did, we had to do so much research, and it was just great. And it allowed me to see the country in a new way. And so even like with Trump and January 16th, I'm just like, oh, all of this has happened before. We just cycle. That's all we do. We just cycle. You know what I mean?
It's a circle. It's a circle.
Yeah. And that circle usually happens whenever Black people start to like, get shit. And then shit gets clamped down. You know what I mean? It's like now I call it like, Black people are like Zion in the Matrix. And every time Zion starts to get built up, the machines come to destroy. And then Zion starts to build up again, machine comes to destroy. And you can see it with Reconstruction. You see it with civil rights. You see it with, the blowback after Obama. It's continuous. You look at Atlanta. Atlanta's building up, and all of a sudden there's all these laws that you can't vote. And we're going to make it hard for you so that we can strip all of your shit. So that was the great thing about it. And I really loved the episodes that I wrote on that series, and was able to like, obey the contours of what is expected of me as a writer, but also be able to infuse what I call subversiveness to things. And like, even like I did like a Bonnie and Clyde episode, and I made sure that when Rufus, the Black character, was there, that when he drinks at the fountain, there's colored and white. You know what I mean? And he has to drink it.
Did you write the episode where Rufus? Did you write the episode where Rufus went to? Okay, I'm gonna stay on track. But the episode where he went to this bootleg place, the bootleg liquor place, jazz place. Yes. Did you write that episode?
Yes, I did. That was the King of the Delta Blues, Robert Johnson episode.
Yes.
With the juke joint and all that. That was the most fun I've ever had on a set. Because the other thing is, you go on set and it's just white people. For the most part, the crew is mostly white. And this one here, it was just like, it was nothing. The extras were all Black. You know what I mean? It was just just love. Like, I come on, and I'm like, yo, and it's just dap. And we just, I even wore a suit. You know what I mean? It was great. It was just so much fucking fun.
I love that episode. You see, The show's been gone forever, but that episode stuck.
Yo, I still get people sending me stuff about that episode. It's crazy that so it ended, and at that point I was like, I'm never writing for television again. I was just tired. I just burnt out, and I wanted to get my own stuff out. You know what I mean? And so I told my reps, I said, look, I'm just taking time off. Don't send me anything, blah, blah, blah. They still did. And I turned down a few things. And in that time, that's when I wrote Fractal, and I started working on Bardos again. I ended up taking a year off, and I got married, had a great 7-week honeymoon out. And then, my current boss now, Eric Kripke, who created the Boys Show, he reached out. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm doing my own shit, blah, 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 blah. And he was just like, okay, all right, word, all right. I'm like, I'm not doing TV, fuck that, blah, blah. He's like, okay, yeah. He's like, yeah, just check out this. And he gave me the pilot of The Boys that was already shot. And, I've turned down a few shows by now, and my wife is just like, I got you, baby. You don't have to work on anything. I got you, blah, blah. Just focus on your stuff. And I'm in the living room, and she's in the another room, and she hears me giggling. And she's just like, so I come in, I'm just like, yeah, so, he wanted me to watch this. And she's like, mm-hmm. And I'm saying all day, she's like, you're going to take it, aren't you? I'm just going to talk to him. Blah, blah. And so I went and chopped it up with him. So I was just like, look, I'm not interested in just a traditional superhero capes and thing. I was just like, what I see that you're doing is using the superhero as a metaphor to tackle a lot of issues that are going on in society. And I'm like, that attracts me. You know what I mean? That sort of like punk hip hop way of attacking the system, I'm interested in. And he was down with that. He was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do, blah, blah. So I came and I joined them in the middle of season 2. And so my first episode.
And that's when we met.
Probably, yes. Yeah, I was there, in Toronto.
We met. Yeah. We met in Toronto in 2019. And yes. you just joined them as a writer, and now you're a writer-producer.
Yeah. Now I'm a producer. So that's like 3 seasons later, yeah.
What's the creative process like for you now, as opposed to what it was like in 2019 when we met? You were the writer, now you're the producer writer. Were you the producer writer on the Timeless episode?
No. I was by the time I did the Robert Johnson episode, I was a story editor. So when you become a TV writer, there's different tiers. You start off as and I'm not I don't have ambition for television, so I could be incorrect in some of these, so I don't pay attention. But you start off as a staff writer, then you are a story editor, then you are executive story editor. And I think that was the level I was at when I joined The Boys. Then after executive story editor, I think might be co-producer, then producer. I think after this, I would become a supervising producer. There might be something in between executive producer. And then once you're executive producer or co-executive producer, then executive producer, and then I guess you create your own show and you're a runner. You know what I mean? The other way to bypass all of that is to sell your own show, and then you're automatically an executive producer and or a showrunner. I probably wouldn't. I don't know. Some people, when it's like their first show, they'll get a showrunner who knows the ropes and understands the studio, how to deal with the network, and also production things like for instance, like The Boys is a massive show. It is like doing a feature film, a big Hollywood feature film per episode.
What's unique about being a producer writer?
Oh, I don't know. For me, it is. I have much more experience. So, and there's more responsibility. I mean, the great thing about Eric. Eric was also a co-creator of Timeless. So Sean Ryan hired me, and that's when I met Eric. And so we hit it off then. But the great thing about them, and even in my first show, but I think I was sort of brought around as sort of like a pet, more so than to make decisions. Because you're a staff writer, and especially for a show like that, you're like nothing. But once I started working with Sean Ryan and Eric Kripke, the great thing about them is that they're the few showrunners who are confident enough in themselves to make sure their writers, their people, are doing the most. You know what I mean? Are going to go out there and produce an episode. So even when I was coming in the first year on Timeless, my job was still as a producer, even though I didn't have it in title. I was there for all the casting, all the art department meetings, and making decisions and finding out things aren't working budget-wise. So you've got to rewrite the script, for that, that new location, or letting them know what's happening at any given moment, so that you're actively involved. You know what I'm saying? And so I developed those skills as a producer. And so when I get to like today, just like finishing up in Toronto, I know the stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know everything, because there's a whole other level of stuff that happens, especially once you get to executive producer. Right. But I can now be like, okay, this department, we need this, and here's a checklist of when I need to have tests on this stunt, or this explosion, a blood explosion, or or this vomit, or this, you know what I mean? And the level of detail, so that there aren't any accidents, because we're too big to have, like, you show up and the prosthetic is wrong. We don't got time for all that. So we have multiple tests that lead up to that day. Stunts, same thing. It's just like, there's the first pass, and by the time you get to shooting, there's been like, anywhere from 6 to a dozen passes on the stunt. And then once you figure out the location, well, okay, how do you need to adjust the stunt? You know what I mean? And so it's great to be a part of that. And I'm there with the director, giving them insight on character, on story, and also for me, because I'm an actor, performance. When I know an actor can give me more, you know what I'm saying? I'm just like, tell them this, or push them this way. Yeah. I'm also working on FRACTAL.
Let's talk about FRACTAL, which existed long before you got The Boys, which existed long before you did Timeless. It's coming out soon.
So it happened after Timeless. That was the year that I took off, that I was like, I need to get my voice out there. Okay. And it was also when there was all of these police murders of like innocent people, you know what I mean, that were going out. And so I was just viscerally just getting irritated and angry. And luckily I have art to channel a lot of those things, because if I didn't have that, who knows where my life would be. Because people had been asking me to write something about a lot of that stuff, but their thinking was also very like linear, and I hate linear storytelling. You know what I mean? Just like, oh, here's the issue, boom. It's just like, that's a basic ass story. You know what I mean? I'm just, you see these movies that come up and I'm just like, yawn.
Back there we have FRACTAL back there, hidden under a white blanket.
That's not a dead body.
That's not a dead body. That's FRACTAL.
I can't show anybody that.
Nope. But just know he's there.
Yeah. There's the trailer I'm gonna drop. Actually, by the time this thing comes out, the trailer will probably be out there. But I wanted to do, again, I didn't want to just attack the problem in a direct way. I really just wanted to. The thing with like The Matrix, you could just sit there and enjoy that film, and it's not until you get to the parking lot, or get home that night, or wake up the next morning, or go to the water cooler at work, that you just start to like, oh wait, there's some other shit that was going on. You get into a conversation with somebody, you say, red pill, blue pill, what is reality? What is this? Bending the spoon, all of this other stuff. And I wanted myself to be that kind of filmmaker, storyteller. So I was like, well, how do I attack this issue? And then I thought about myself. And actually what it was when, not Floyd, but Cameron, my God, there's been so many murders.
Yeah.
I apologize for not remembering the brother's name in Baton Rouge who was killed. Sterling, Alton Sterling.
Alton Sterling.
When he was murdered, there was a press conference where once again the Black mothers is asked to come out and not be too angry and bring the world together for harmony and all that bullshit. And standing beside her, she's at the podium with a bunch of microphones in her face and press, was their son. And he was like 14, big kid, because Alton Sterling was huge. So the kid at 14 was already, I think, at his mother's height, if not taller. And she's talking, but my eyes just go into him. And I see him and he's trying to keep himself together. And there's tears running down his face and he's shaking. And finally, he just starts to pass out. And luckily, a couple guys behind him grab him and pick him up and take him up. And he's just pieces. And I just got so fucking angry. And I was just like, when all the press is gone, there's going to be him and his mom at a table eating dinner or breakfast or whatever. And there's that empty chair. And there's not going to be his dad to talk him through. I mean, yes, he's got a great mom and everything, but he won't have that person that he's been used to having. He's accustomed to having there to give him advice. And I thought about myself in the times when, my own altercations with police as a kid. And I was a nerd, you know what I mean? I made straight A's. I was a badass artist and I was just a geek. I went to fucking comic book conventions and that type of stuff. But that didn't prevent cops putting a gun in my face, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how many times where I could have died, or my dad could have died, or my little brother, or whatever. And the first time I moved down to Miami, a couple weeks after, my parents went out to do some shopping. It was a house. It was a brand new house, and I mean, we just moved into the house, so it needed stuff. And so they left us there, and we're playing around on our front lawn. It was a white neighborhood. All of a sudden, this sheriff's car pulls up into it. And he's like, what are you all doing there? And I'm 8 years old. My brother is 6. And I'm like, we hear the bugs because we heard cicadas for the first time. And we're from Brooklyn. You know what I mean? So we're just like, what the? And he's just like, okay, that's nice. Go on home. And we're like, oh, this is our house. I'm saying this because my little brother's 6. And I'm just like, this is our house. He's like, no, it's not. Go home. We didn't know there was like this poor Black neighborhood, like a mile and a half down. So he marches us off our property, gets in his car and drives behind us, pushing us out of so by the third block, my little brother's crying. I'm starting to cry because I'm lost because I don't know the neighborhood. So that has been my consistent interaction with police. You know what I mean? And so all of this stuff was just starting to trigger me. And so I thought about, I'm sorry, and I know this is a long way of going about it, but the story is about this kid who has a gift of creativity and art and et cetera, who has this real bond with his brother. And what happens when his brother is taken from him, murdered. And I wanted to do sort of, a play on, well, what if you contemporized early Spielberg, where it was this idyllic, suburban neighborhood where these incredible things as a kid watching E.T., like, oh, well, that shit only happens to white kids. You know what I mean? Those cool aliens come for white kids and stuff like that. I thought, well, what if you contemporized it and put it into the context of the world that we're living in? That's not so sheltered and et cetera. So it's about that and this bond he creates with this creature to deal with his trauma of losing his brother and to find solace. You know what I mean? So it's definitely so there's an entertainment value to it. We got the creature. Luckily, we did the GoFundMe. We raised $125,000. We got Jim Henson Company on board. They created the creature with me. It's just fantastic. At the time, we had Industrial Light and Magic, because again, as a kid, those were the two companies I wanted to work for. I was doing like animations and stop motion stuff and just trying, because I would watch what George Lucas specials were going on and be like, oh, okay, well, how do you do that? How do you do the wire work? I didn't understand blue screens. I'll just put a blue paper behind it. Anyway, but I was doing all of that. And so all of a sudden I reached out to ILM and they're like, yeah, but then the pandemic happened. And they're like, well, we can't do it because we're now getting bombarded with all these projects. So I ended up getting with this company called 5 a.m. Effects with this visual effects supervisor named Brian Houlihan, who lives in Taiwan. And he created this team and he had this impassioned, speech of like why he wants to do this. And we had a couple more reputable, like they had like visual effects, but they were just like, yeah, we could do that. And I'm just like, could you?
Need a little passion,
I didn't even know what I want. Yeah, and he had that passion. So I went with him. We got a grant from 150. They gave us a beautiful grant. We got another grant from Real Change, and so that we can do the score with a live orchestra. And then we got Justice RX, who came in and gave us a large chunk of the money that we needed. And so, it's one of those things like, if you build it, they will come. If you build something and to all your people, you build something, don't half-ass storytelling. Don't half-ass your career, whether you're an actor, whether you're a director, whether you're a writer. Don't just do something for the sake of doing something. Don't just write for like, oh, I need a script or I need to write a whatever. Make sure it comes from here. Exactly. Yeah. At least that has been my path. Everything I've done from my heart has found success. You know what I'm saying? And so this little tiny 9-page script that I wrote, all of us, it took years. This was now, I'm looking at the original drawing on my screen here. Did that in 2018. That's 5 years ago that I wrote the script and did the first initial concept drawings of the characters. And it takes time, but you end up, if it's true and if it's unique and you truly have a voice, and everybody has a voice, it's just a matter of are you able to tap that voice? You'll attract people who will recognize that. And the great thing about when you attract those people, it's not for them to necessarily just do exactly as you say. The cool thing about what I learned in television, who I wasn't before I was just like, I was just tunnel vision. I was just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna grind, and everybody has to come to my vision. You know what I mean? With television, I realized, when you're as good as Sean Ryan and Eric Kripke, and you are confident in your talent, you allow for voices. And you see where those voices go. You don't shut people down because something beautiful and new can come out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
so you bring that approach to your team leadership? So you brought your approach to this project?
Yeah, because like FRACTAL was sort of cartoonish before, but then working with Henson Company, it's like, well, what do you think about this? And I'm just like, keep going in that direction. It's not what I thought of. For me, FRACTAL was much more of a fluid techno-organic creature, but they gave it a sort of biology. And that allowed me to lean in more. I was like, well, okay, well, what is the background of FRACTAL? Where did these creatures evolve before they became techno-organic? Is the body it has now just an echo of what it used to look like a million years ago? You know what I mean? That these creatures have sort of held on to. And then as we're going through with the VFX, it has a hologram eye, and our VFX dude is just fucking genius. He's in Brazil because we've sourced it to a bunch of different countries, but he's in Brazil, and he just had this idea of like, I was just kind of thinking like, what if the eyes are just solid? What if it's actually trying to communicate with the boy? Like it's its own form of sign language. Oh, that's the other thing I didn't mention. The child is deaf.
I want to talk about this. So what inspired the child, that choice to make the child deaf? And I know that you're going to be bringing Black American Sign Language to the
Yeah,
fore for this film. How did that impact your creative journey?
sure.
And once again, what inspired you to make that choice?
I wish I can say like when I first thought about like writing this thing, I was just like, oh, I'm going to do it about a deaf character, and it's about representation. I'm not that kind of person. My thing is about what serves the story. And when I was looking to write it, I didn't want it to be one of these short films that are like 20 minutes long. A short film should feel cinematic. It shouldn't feel like, oh, there's this thing that happened and a day in the life of, or whatever.
Take you on a
really should
journey.
take you on a fucking journey in the same way that a feature film does. And I was like, okay, well, that's my North Star. That's what I want to do. I want to do a live action version of what Pixar does. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it in 5 to 7 minutes, in 5 to 7 pages. And each page, more or less, equals a minute. So it ended up being about 9.5. No, 9 pages by the time I finished. And so the way that, with Pixar, because none of the characters spoke, I was like, well, how do I do that? How do I tell a story where no one's speaking, knowing that I want it to be about police violence and murder? And that's when I was just like, okay, well, what if the kid's deaf? And what if we're going through this story from this kid's perspective? And so that told me, okay, well, the camera now has to be at the kid's height. And when he looks at adults, the camera has to tilt up like that film Radio Flyer. You know what I mean? Or even like Charlie Brown, you know what I mean? And we don't hear anything because he doesn't hear anything. And so that answered so even if there's dialogue, we don't hear it. And him communicating with his brother is all through sign language. And there's a point when the brother does this monologue, which when the trailer drops, you'll see pieces of that monologue in there. That it's almost like a shaman doing a spell, because I had spent many a time sort of like eavesdropping on like sort of sign language communities, as in like teens getting off of school and and I'm just like fascinated. And I'm like, I wish I knew what they were saying, but it was just a fluidity. And it's a fluidity that you don't normally see in film, because you're teaching a hearing actor how to sign. So there's a stiltedness, there's pauses in between their signing that I'm like, when I see people do sign language, I don't see that. It's kind of like when you're watching a film about that's set in the West Indies with American actors, and you're just like, that ain't right. You know what I mean? I'm just like, y'all don't sound correct. I don't know which island you're pulling from, but it's not working.
Yeah.
But so I knew I wanted it to be authentic, and so that lent itself to, well, okay, I started getting pushed to hire hearing actors to do the sign. I was like, no. First, I don't want to offend that community. I'm already on the outside. So this has to be right. I have to do my due diligence to really represent them. And when I wrote it, it wasn't about Black American Sign Language. It was just ASL, because that's all I knew. And then I think 2 friends sent me articles about BASL. And this particular sister, Nakia Smith, out of Texas, I think Houston. And she's like an advocate, and she's just dope as fuck. And so I reached out to her on Twitter, just so I was like, yo, I'm such and such, blah, blah. I saw some of your TikToks, some of your tweets. I'm doing this film. Would you be interested in talking to me about it? And a couple, I think, weeks later, she hit me back, and she was just like, oh yeah, I'll talk. She's like, I'll need an interpreter, blah, blah, blah. So I started talking to her. One thing led to another. She started teaching me some basic BASL. And
I saw that in your crowdfunding video.
Yeah. And so that led to, then trying to cast this thing. And again, I'm getting sent like regular actors who are trying to do, who just either know ASL or that I would have, and I'm just like, no, I need that fluidity, because the beautiful thing about BASL is there's an Africanness to when they're talking, signing to each other. And if you didn't know that two people or a few people like half a block down the street were deaf, you would think they were in a full on like voice conversation, like as Black people, because they're and just like, and all the gesticulations that we know are there. And I was like, it has to be that authentic. I need that. You know what I mean?
So where
And
did you
so
find your
that's when
actor?
so a couple things happened. It took forever. And I was hoping to find somebody obviously locally, because that's cheaper. But it ended up, we checked all of the US. And our director of ASL, his brother named CJ Jones, and he's been in a few films. He was in Baby
Oh,
Driver.
yes.
Yeah,
I can
he
see him right
played
now.
the lead's father or like stepfather. He's Black.
Oh, I
He played,
remember that character.
yes,
Yeah.
and he is also the director of ASL for he does all the sign language to help James Cameron with the Na'vi in Avatars. So he's doing that. And he was just, I think he was the one, because we were really, our casting director was really having a hard time. And he hit us to this kid, Kayvon Woodard out of Maryland. And I met him. He auditioned, and I was, yeah. Because I thought the brother was going to be the hard one, because the brother can hear, but he's coda. You know what I mean? I thought that was going to be the easy one, and to find a fully deaf kid. But bam, as soon as I saw his audition, I was like, yeah, that's him. And they're just like, well, do you want to see it? I'm like, no, I don't want to see no more people. That's the dude, because he just had it. And as an actor, when somebody has it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, boom. And we took, I think the rest of the year looking for the brother, and they almost they tried to get me a hearing actor who had like, who was just kind of, but I found out that Kayvon had this cousin who is his mom, because Kayvon is the 5th generation of deaf in his family, so he's naturally BASL, because the whole thing with BASL is back during segregation, and in those times, not even just the South segregation, all over the country, they wouldn't allow Black people to learn ASL. So they developed their own version of it. And and so there is no universal BASL, because it is BASL in Maryland, there's a BASL in Houston,
Regionalism.
and even in Houston, it's going to be different from family to family to family. You know what I mean? All of these things I had to learn. I was like, oh, there's no basic shit. It's going to be, there's regions. But Kayvon's mom, April, had her sister who lived in Houston. Her sister was also deaf and married a deaf man, but their son is hearing. So he's grown up a coda kid. And so I was like, well, let me meet him. And they're like, well, he's not really an actor. Not really. He wasn't an actor. He just wasn't. And I had no real ambition towards it. And I was like, well, let me see him anyway. And he auditioned, and he was the only one who did that monologue. And it was just transcendent, because he just told a story. And when they get into the accident, he just, and I was just like, yo.
Yeah.
But because he wasn't trained, he was so green. By the time I started talking to him, he just shut down.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And I'm just like, and all of these voices in my head, were just like, we got to find somebody else. You can't do that, because he'll. But I just said, no, he's the one. Because when I got the two of them together on a Zoom,
magic,
like the type of rapport that you could only wish for. You know what I mean? Like, you look at like what Spielberg was able to do with the kids in E.T. or even what's his name's kids in Close Encounters, where they just felt authentic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I just fought and fought. I just dug in my heels. I'm like, he's a one. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh fuck, I hope this works. You know what I mean? And anyway, long story short, there was one scary moment where we just weren't getting through with him in a rehearsal, and it just exploded. And I was just like, that was the day before shooting, and I was like, oh fuck, because all I know is a bunch of people are gonna be like, I told you so, I told you so. But I sat down with him after, and I was just like, yo, this is, look, I'm an actor too. I fucked up in front of, and I showed him like my scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I was like, look, I screwed up on that. And there were all these extras and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have my lines. And he, by the next day, this brother came in a totally different person, knew his lines, and just had this curiosity. And by the time we started shooting and we got to shoot on the Warner Brothers lot in a house, and it just, everything came together. The film looks fantastic. The visual effect is next level shit. And I'm so excited because for me, it is an announcement to the world that like, okay, I'm ready to do some shit. You know what I mean? I've been doing TV and it's been great and I've been really, really fortunate. But now I want to start doing that next thing. I want to start becoming this filmmaker who does magical realism stuff on a big scale. You know what I'm saying? And to inspire that next generation of storytellers that are Black, brown, from the Caribbean, from red, from Native, whatever, of how can we tell our stories in not the typical way? You know what I mean? How can we use genre and yet get the things that we want into those stories? You shouldn't have to stop your entertainment just to get a message. You know what I mean? You remember like when you had great teachers in school, there are those who just did the lesson plan and it was like, this is it. Then there are those who just take you on a learning journey, and you are smiling through learning. Your mind is just like, the synapses are just like pop, 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 pop. And that is what cinema and storytelling, I feel, should do and needs to do.
So
because that's the stuff that,
Do you feel your vision for cinema, the cinema you're going to create, the cinema that you want to inspire, is directly related to your Caribbean heritage, specifically your Trinidadian background? Do you feel that infuses you with the genre that you want to evolve, develop, explore?
In a subtle way, because I was born in Brooklyn. We went back and forth to Trinidad.
Your parents were Trinidadian, though. So your food, your blood, your heart.
Exactly. There is especially, I know Trinidad. There's a humor to Trinis. There's a zest for life to Trinis that I had to learn to allow in my professional life. Before, I was just so angry, I guess, for lack of a better term. I was just like, I wanted to be Marlon Brando. You know what I mean? I was just brooding all the time. And once I got into, this later portion of my life, these last 5-6 years, I let that stuff go and just let my personality come out. And for lack of any other term, it is my Trinidadian heritage coming out of just even on The Boys, I have a particular way of infusing humor because I just find things funny because Trinis always crack on you. You know what I mean? Everything is just, and so in ways, I've sort of come back to it, the spiritual side. But my grandmother was Southern Baptist, and I'd hear stories of spirits, and my dad being taken into the woods because at that time it was illegal for her and her group and people to be doing it because I guess some parts the Americans might call voodoo, but it was really just African. You know what I mean? Wearing of the whites, and I remember as a kid being in her church compound, and a guy just ringing a cowbell and people catching power. And you can't tell me I didn't see somebody levitate. You know what I mean? As a kid, and as I see it, this woman levitated off the ground. So all of that, you know, Africanness and that came, you know, from being enslaved into the West Indies has become a part of me in a way that I didn't realize. And that is all of a sudden just come into how I approach not only storytelling, but life. You know what I'm saying? And it has made me just happy for the first time in a really long time. So I can't put a fine point to it, but you know, and be like, okay, it's this. But finally I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is why I was born. I was lucky enough to be born Trini. Because even coming into this country and dealing with the issues of this country, I was still always an outsider looking in, always in my mind, sort of observing, commenting, and seeing things in different, because I always had my culture, you know what I mean? It wasn't just this oppressive thing of, oh, we're going to take away your history. We're going to do everything we can to take away your history. Even today with the CRT and all this other stuff, is like, we want you to forget who the fuck you are. You know what I mean? And give you something new and tell you that you're garbage or this or that you're not. I always was just like removed. I was like, well, that ain't true, because
that's not what my daddy told me. That's not what my mama told me. That's what my grandma told me.
Exactly. You know what I mean? My dad told me, my mom told me I'm a god. You know what I'm saying? I hope one day that I can do a film about Simon and how when he created Pan in Trinidad. But that's further down the road. I want it to be sort of like my ode, you know, my love song to Trinidad, you know, about how this kid heard rain hitting the drums and then decided to like take a hammer or whatever and chisel out things and create the notes, and how that's led to like, you know, these orchestras, you know what I mean? It's just, and I just
I'm excited for you. So I know FRACTAL is coming out. That's what's next. Anything next that you want to share with us that you want people to follow?
Yeah, so FRACTAL will come out like in June. We're going to drop the trailer next week. We're going to do a whole new crowdfunding campaign to help us out through post. So I encourage all of your viewers to, you know, if they have the means to, like, you know, contribute to it. We'll have the Creative Visions page link that I'll send to you. The great thing about Creative Visions is that they partnered with us because they believed in the story, and it's a fiscal sponsorship. So all of any donation that you give is a tax write-off by the end of the year, but come tax time. So that's just a great thing. You know, that they thought we were worthy enough for that. So
are they available to all filmmakers, or do they choose filmmakers?
They choose.
Be fiscal sponsor?
They choose. Yeah. Someone recommended me to them.
Right.
But they have a website. Go to creativevisions.org.
It sounds like you listen to your heart a lot.
Yeah. I don't have a choice.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of work to be able to do that because there's so much noise out there.
Yeah, and it's scary. It is scary.
It is scary. It is scary.
Yeah. But, you know,
thank you so much.
If you do it right, you just keep at it, you know, good things will happen.
If you do it right. And the right is up to you to define.
Yes. Yeah. But
I like that. Let's end on that note. I love this. And I want to thank you all for watching and being part of our February chat. Be sure to follow us, like us, and share, and then be updated on our next chats. And be sure to donate. What we do is from the heart, and we need your support. So this artist chat is being supported by donations. And the messages are vital. So check us out, www.conchproductions.com. Thank you so much, Anslem.